YouTubers, welcome to our channel Flight Note Center. Just before we continue, please remember to leave a comment or a like, and you can also subscribe for our upcoming series. Today's discussion is going to be about altimeter setting procedures, and as we start, the altimeter is a primary instrument in an aircraft that is used to indicate the altitude in which the aircraft is flying in. But before it is able to indicate, because it works on pressure differences, therefore a setting has to be set in the instrument. So altimeter setting procedures are those procedures that are used by the aviation industry for the management of air traffic, such that the air traffic is able to know the altitude and the height in which an aircraft is operating at. Usually, during the course of a flight, an aircraft may travel through areas of high pressure or low pressure, and because the altimeter is a pressure-based instrument, which will experience these changes of pressures, the vertical indications it provides may differ. In the current world, there are two types of altimeters. We have the analog one, as shown in the picture below, and the digital one, which is now in the glass cockpit aircraft in the modern technology. So therefore, it is an important point to note that we need to know these general terms, the general terms of such like the QNE, QNH, and the transition layer, the transition altitude, the transition level, and also the flight level. Because if we don't take these into consideration, then we are likely to find lack of separation, and that might lead to accidents in future. These vertical readouts, which are provided by the altimeter, as led by the procedures that we've just seen, the altimeter setting procedures, they are to ensure that there is adequate vertical separation between aircrafts or other machines that are operating in the air. And these separation are to ensure that there is no air miss, and there is no CFIT, that is control flight into terrain, and adequate separation between aircraft en route and the obstacle along the way. Altimeter setting procedures, we have some general terms that I think that we need to understand. For example, height, the altitude, the flight level, transition layer, transition level, and transition altitude. For height, when we set the QFE setting, which is query field elevation, then the readout provides the pilot with vertical distance above ground. And I want us to highlight the word vertical distance above ground. And the QFE setting, which is query field elevation. For altitude, when the altimeter is set to query nautical height, which is the QNH, the readout provides is the vertical distance above mean sea level. For flight level, when we set QNE, query nautical elevation, which is always 1013.25, which is also referred to as standard, the altimeter provides a readout which is referred to as pressure altitude, which is not related to any pressure. As a continuation, a level is a genetic term relating to the vertical position of an aircraft in flight and meaning variously the height, altitude, or flight level. As you have seen in the previous slide, the height, altitude, or flight level are terms that are used in different scenarios. For example, the height is used when the altimeter setting is on QFE, which will give us the vertical distance above ground, and the altitude is when the altimeter setting has been set with the QFE, which will then give us the altitude above ground, above mean sea level, or flight level, which is when we set the QNE 1013.25 hectopascal. So when we set QFE, we get height above a specific reference point, in this case above ground, and when we set QNH, we get altitude, that is height above mean sea level, and elevation is that height above mean sea level of a fixed point, e.g., for example, an aerodrome. And so, point to note is that at mean sea level, the QFE and QNH have the same value, and therefore altitude and height have the same value, which would be probably 0. So vertical readout depends on the pressure setting on the altimeter. Whatever the pilot has set in the altimeter bag is what will give us the readout, the vertical readout, which is the altitude, the height, or the flight level. So aircraft with a set pressure value climb and descend at the same climbing and descending at the same area, therefore will have same pressure value, so that they can avoid any collision. As you all know that IFR flights and VFR flight, their separation in uncontrolled airspace is usually 500 feet, such that maybe an IFR flight might fly at flight level 090, and the other will fly at 095. This presents a dangerous situation, which when we don't have a correct altimeter setting, then this can lead to accident and maybe loss of life. Therefore, it's for this reason that QNE is usually being used, the 1013.25 hectopascal, to avoid this collision, such that an aircraft in air pressure A, as shown in the picture, and also two aircraft in air pressure A, and two aircraft in air pressure B, and two aircraft in air pressure C, and pressure D will have the same separation no matter where they are, because they have same pressure setting, and they will be trying to maintain the required altitude. So transition altitude, this is the transition altitude is that highest altitude which is on QNH within the vicinity of an aerodrome, and beyond this point flight levels are to be flown. At this altitude, aircraft climbing will have to change from the QNH, which is given by the aerodrome or tower, to the QNE, which is the standard altimeter setting 1013.25 hectopascal. Determining this altitude, this is how this altitude is determined. The highest point within a 25 nautical miles radius, then you add 1,500 feet to it, and you round it off. Let's say if we do this highest point, and the highest altitude plus 1,500 give us maybe 8,900, then therefore we need to round it off to the next 1,000 feet, which will be 9,000 feet. So any aircraft departing within that control zone or that area will have to set the QNH, and when transiting to this, we'll have to change over to QNE. Transition level is basically, the transition level is the lowest flight level which may be flown in the vicinity of the aerodrome. Any aircraft proceeding with a descent is required to change the altimeter setting from QNE 1013 to the local QNH of the control zone or the aerodrome. Transition altitude is a fixed value, and transition level varies as the pressure in the area changes. Transition level will be determined by the thickness of the transition layer. The thickness of the transition layer is usually calculated in such a way that it is never less than 1,000 feet and never more than 1,500. The transition level is therefore will therefore be always be above the transition altitude. So when transiting from when maybe flying from a control zone and you reach the transition altitude, you'll have to set the QNH, which is QNE 1013, and as you transit between the range of 1,000 to 1,500 feet, and then therefore you will be referring to transition levels. So each station with a transition altitude will have a predetermined chart indicating the pressures at which the transition level is to change. These fluctuations in the transition level will only affect aircraft descending to the airfield, as they will be required to make the change from query nautical elevation, the QNE, to query nautical height at the correct time. These fluctuations in the transition level will only affect aircraft descending to the airfield, as they will be required to make the change from QNE to QNH at the correct time. These are pilot procedures that we need to know. The changeover from QNE to QNH during when getting into a control zone, and changing over from QNH to QNE when transiting from the transition altitude. So basically that's the end of our presentation for today, and as we all know, we'll be coming up with more teaching and notes on the aviation industry. And please, if you can subscribe to our channel and leave a comment for any clarification on some of the points. And thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye.